Hello, everybody, and happy Monday. This is Professor Ford here. I just want to do a quick overview of what was another excellent week on the message boards. So I thought that the conversation, so a lot of the questions about both Ken Brown's 10-point test as well as questions about the fiscal trend monitoring system that ICMA uses and that you're going to adapt for your final project were especially interesting. I appreciate so many of yours willingness to share your own personal experience, whether that be at work or even in your personal financial life, which was kind of fun. But I really think that you kind of nailed it. It was described by one student as the same way you would go about evaluating a private company if you wanted to invest in them, and I kind of like the way that sounded. That if you were to think of your local government as an investment, a place where you take your one share and you buy it. Would this be a safe investment or would this be a risky investment? And though there is no perfect number or no perfect ratio, it certainly is possible to take a broad look at all these different fiscal indicators that are out there and come up with a clearer picture than you might get from just looking at a budget without any type of system in place, or from just reading an introduction to a budget, or just trusting your local municipality. So I really thought that those questions and those comments were absolutely great. I'm glad to hear that many of you enjoyed the chapter on strategic planning. We don't have a lecture on it, and part of the reason I don't spend too much time on strategic planning in this class, aside from the chapter 12 of the reading, is that there is an entire class dedicated to that in the MPA program that I encourage you all to take if you're interested in that. But it's true that strategic planning is a vital, is a connected part of the budgeting process, meaning that if you have a strategic plan, a 5-year plan, let's say, it makes sense that you're going to have fiscal plans that reflect that strategic plan. So certainly those two things do go hand in hand. I also appreciated the questions related to the nonprofit financial health. And as some of you pointed out, it's a little different taking a look just at the 990 and these IRS tax forms as opposed to looking at an actual municipal budget. There's pros and cons. I mean, the pro there is that the 990 numbers are what's legally required to go to the IRS, and everyone reports them. Everyone reports them the same way, and they ought to be comparable. There's great value to that. At the same time, it's hard to get that level of specificity that you might get in a municipal budget. So that's one of the downsides, and there's trade-offs there. But the bottom line is with nonprofit organizations, the 990 data is what is available and comparable and easy to obtain. So you're kind of stuck with it, and you got to make the best of it. And it's those of you that do choose to do a nonprofit for your last class or for your last project, I'll be fascinated to see what you come up with, because there's been some really good and innovative work on that done right here in this budgeting class in the past. And I hope you can contribute to that. And I hope that I can even use yours as a model final assignment moving forward. I also appreciated the discussion of smaller communities. And this issue of how do you ensure trust and transparency and accountability when you have extremely small numbers of people, often just an individual, that are in charge of the finances. And certainly there's checks and balances that can be built in, including relationships with or I guess duties, fiduciary responsibilities, oversight responsibilities placed on the governing board. But it's true. Right? When there's one person in charge, you invite the risk there that there could be transparency issues, or even that a mistake might be made and go uncovered. So it's important to have some of these checks built into the systems, as a couple of you had noted. And I think that was kind of the bulk of what you had to say. I thought it was another great time on the message boards. I hope that you got something good out of the lectures. I know that some of you did mention the revenue forecasting discussion on the message boards, and the value in that is, of course, that budgeting is trying to predict the future. We're dealing in a time of political uncertainty, and it's not just this time. I mean, that's just how it works when you're working in local and state government. That there can be political changes that impact your mandates, your regulatory mandates, and your spending responsibilities, and even the needs of the governed. And therefore, you're always going to have to make some estimates regarding revenues and expenditures over the next year or 2 years if it's a state budget cycle. Here in Wisconsin, we have a 2-year budget cycle. So what I was trying to get at with that revenue forecasting lecture is that it's much better to try to make an educated estimate based on previous data that is available, the previous data that are available, excuse me. And there's different ways to go about that, and as I discussed in that lecture, you want to let kind of the reality of the context in which you're making this estimate be your guide on what method you use. But the larger lesson there is that we can take advantage of that inherent inertia in budgeting to try to use past data to forecast what we expect to happen in the future. In regards to your second and your second and final assignment, hopefully you have chosen your state budget paper. If you haven't, make sure you get that done because that's going to be your next big assignment that's due. And I definitely want you all to make sure you have a municipality or a nonprofit organization picked out ASAP for your final project so we can start digging into those. In our 4th class, we will have some time dedicated, more time than usual dedicated to that discussion of what you're finding in your budgets and those questions you have, as opposed to formal lecture, because I think kind of the best way to deal with many of those questions you'll come up with during your final assignment is to share your things you're finding with the rest of the class and, of course, with me. So hopefully you enjoyed that 3rd class. Hopefully you have a lot of clarity now on what your 2nd and 3rd assignments are, and good luck. It's not an easy assignment, and I can't stress enough that the kind of final outcome of these assignments is not necessarily, oh, you got it perfectly right, you evaluated the municipality correct, or you chose the right option for the state budget paper. It doesn't work like that. We have this ambiguity built in to budgeting. What I want to see is that you have gone in and thought critically and really put in some time and effort to try to understand what these financial measures are telling you and what they're not telling you. So with that, I hope you have a great week. I hope that it's as warm where you are today as it is here in lovely Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and I look forward to seeing you on our next module. Thanks.